What's up guys, I'm Braden, Steed, and today we're going to learn how to make this blanket ladder. So this is really simple. Honestly, it just takes a few simple supplies that you can find at pretty much any local hardware store. So what I have here, I'll show you. I have a 2x3x8 piece of board, and then I also have two 1 1/4 inch dowels that are 48 inches tall. So this is all that we need to make this blanket ladder. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to mark our lumber. So I'm going to take this 2x3x8 and I'm going to cut it straight in half. So I already measured it, it's just slightly longer than 8 feet or 96 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark center and then cut on one side, and then in the end they'll both end up being the same length. And we'll double check just to make sure after we cut. I just want to get the most out of this wood. And then with these dowels, they're only 48 inches long, but I want 20-inch rungs. So I'm just going to cut off one end just to make sure it's nice and plumb and flush and all that good stuff, and then I'll mark and cut. So pretty self-explanatory. Just grab your tape measure and just get at it. 48 inches. You guys can adjust this to whatever you want. I want 48. So also, if you have one, I would recommend getting one. If you don't, grab your speed square and mark directly where you marked your line. That way you know it's a perfect 90 and straight line. And then I'm just going to mark the side that I want to cut on with an X. Okay, we'll do these in a second, but let's get cutting. Okay, so the reason that I put this X on the one side is because the thickness of my blade is going to shave off a little bit. So this side is marked to 48. This one is slightly longer than 48, so I'm going to cut on this side of the line. That way this one ends up being 48. Also, I'm not cutting off the ends quite yet, so they're kind of in a rough shape. Because later what we're going to do is we're going to put a 10 or 15 degree angle on them so that it can lean against the wall. Anyways, so let's just line this up real quick and cut away. Make sure you wear safety glasses. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to make the feet of this blanket ladder. So I like 10 degrees. You can adjust that a little bit more if you want. But get on your miter saw, move it over to your desired angle, lock her down, pull your board over, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up another stop block, and that way I can make sure that my second piece is as well the same length as this one, just so that it's all nice and parallel. So yeah, once you figure out where you want it, boom, that should be good. Go for it. Okay, remember how earlier I was saying that we were going to cut off a little bit off the end just to make sure that it was nice and flush and all that good stuff? That's what we're going to do now. Just make sure that you keep your fingers away. Sweet. So now what we can do, we're going to do this on the other one as well. But now what we're going to do is we're going to mark 20 inches, cut, mark another 20, cut. Okay guys, like the 2x3, you can adjust this to whatever length you want. Remember that we're going to be drilling some pockets into the 2x3 so that this can sit in. And those will go in about 3/4 of an inch. So just take into consideration however way you want to plan this. I like 20 inches, so that's what I'm going to keep it at. And with this, it's kind of hard to use the square, so just make a good mark. Okay, so when cutting this, it's the same thing as what we just did, remember? If you want, you can put an X on the side that you want to cut and take away from. I want to keep the 20 inches on this side, therefore I need to cut on this side of the line. So just line it up as best as you can and cut away. Perfect. So what we're going to do is, because we need to make a few of these cuts, is I'm going to set up a stop block. If you don't know what it is, pretty much it's just setting up a block on the end and making sure that this piece of wood stops. So what we're going to do is, if that piece of wood is there, you're going to slide this all the way up to it, butt it up, boom, cut, and you know that it's going to be the same length as that. So if you don't know how to do it, just look up a video. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to mark our dots for where we're going to drill the holes for the dowels. So when we drill the holes, we're only going about halfway through the wood. That way it just looks cleaner in the end, and then we'll put some wood glue in it and all that good stuff. So what I like to do is I'm going to go 4.5 inches down from the flat end of your wood, go 4.5 down, and then every 10 inches I'm going to add another mark. So you can adjust this always, you can adjust it to whatever you want. I'm just showing you how I do it. Let me find my pencil. Maybe. So just make sure you stay consistent on both boards. And another thing to note is that if you cut your boards, let me show you. So if you cut your boards, right, you have the two angles, but when you put the marks on your board for the drilling, make sure that you make it kind of like a dovetail. Because what we're going to do is you're going to drill in this one and then this one, right? So in the end, you want those two holes to be on the inside. So then you'll flip it, and then they'll be the correct way, if that makes sense. You'll see what I'm talking about if you don't understand. But just make that note, make sure that you make it a dovetail. That way you don't mess anything up. Let's mark the second one real quick. Okay. So now what I like to do, I get my speed square again. And I just go along each line, boom, mark. Okay, now what I do is I go back, and on your speed square, you have these little notches that are cut out, and they go by 1/4 inches. So because this is 2.5 inches wide, this board is, I'm going to go 1.25 inch to make it center. So just like figure out on your speed square where that 1.25 is. Then what you could do is you could run this along and just notch, 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 and it makes it a lot easier. Okay, next, I get my drill press. If you just have a drill, that's fine. Just make sure that you try to go in as straight as you can. I like the advantage of having a drill press just because it goes straight. And it'll just make things line up better, not as big of gaps in the end. It's a lot better. Also, another thing to note is I use Forstner Bits because the guiding pin is super shallow. So it's not going to drill all the way through my piece of wood by the time that I get halfway through with the main portion of the bit. See, that's what I mean by a shallow tip to it, so that it doesn't just penetrate all the way through the wood. It just gives a nice, even hole. We got our holes in, and I left it in that dovetail shape just so that you guys can see what I mean. So the holes are in it. So when you twist it, the angles will line up, and the dowels will go in between it. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna do some sanding. I prefer doing it now instead of later when the dowels are set and you have to work around everything. Just do it now, get it out of the way, and then we'll come back, grab our dowels, shove our glue in with it, and then boom, we're there. Another optional thing that you guys can do is if you have a palm router, I like rounding off these corners just to make it uniform with the rest of the shape that's already there. I just use a little round over bit on my router. Super easy, super simple, but it makes it look all that better. Awesome. So just that little bit, I think makes it look a lot better. Okay. Alright guys, now we got all of our pieces to assemble this. So, grab your dowels, some wood glue, and I'm actually going to brad nail this later, just for extra safety, I guess you could say. It's not necessary, it's pretty strong by itself, but just to make sure. So just put a nice glob of glue on the inside of your hole. And if you have some squeeze out, just have a rag and clean it out as you go. I kind of like twisting mine around and just making it nice and gluey all around it. Okay, now that we got one side in, grab your other piece, put glue in all of them, and then we're going to flip this one over on top. Then we'll throw some nails in, clean it up, and I'm going to clamp it as well. Okay. I just like giving it that little wiggle again. Maybe twist it around a little bit. Boom. Set it on its side, because you don't want glue dripping down the whole thing. Okay, now you just need to make sure that you set it square. So you can grab your speed square again and make sure that it's all good to go. I'm just using 18 gauge brad nails. Sweet. So now I'm just going to grab two of my clamps. Got some scrap pieces of wood so that I don't scar up the sides of this. So now, just a final adjustment before the glue sets. See, you can see the mine's off a little bit. So just push it down, kind of adjust it. Once you feel like you got it, lock her down. Again, not overly tight, just tight enough. Sometimes it helps looking at it from a further distance. Alright, what's up guys? So I let this dry for just over a day, and now what we're going to do is we're going to unclamp it and finish putting in some wood glue, or some wood filler, my bad. And then we'll do a quick sand over once again, just to make sure that we get everything good. And then I'm going to stain it. You guys can paint it, you can leave it how it is, whatever you want. So I'm going to stain it, and I'll show you the stain that I'm going to use later. But let's get undoing this real quick. Sweet. Okay, so I put on some wood filler so far, but I haven't done the whole thing, just because my spacer blocks or my protection blocks were kind of blocking it and stuff. But we'll hurry and do that real quick. I see that I have a nail that I need to just tap in a little bit further. And yeah, then we'll sand it and we'll get this thing going. Sweet. Alright guys, so that's the gel stain that we're going to be using. It's the coffee one by Minwax. We're going to apply it and then let it rest for 5 to 10 minutes before we wipe off the excess. I'm just applying it with a brush, and I'm only doing partial portions of it, and then I'll go back and wipe it off and then finish it later. Alright, so here's the finished product after applying one coat of the Minwax coffee stain. And it looks pretty good, so now you can just let it dry, and then you can lean it up against your wall and start putting blankets on it. Just make sure you let it dry before throwing blankets on it so you don't stain them. Thanks for watching, guys. Till next time. See ya.